Hey guys, it's Drew again. I want to tell a quick story about something that just happened over this weekend, but I've got to give the backstory to it. And for those of you who always want to see a card, there will be a couple of cards that are shown in this video, so just bear with me. So I'm going to go back in time a little bit, back to 1993. In 1993, there was a brand new set that was released by Topps, and it was their flagship set of this, and it was Topps Finest. And you guys are familiar with Topps Finest now. It's been around for, well, almost 30 years, but the first year it came out, they were super shiny and they were different, and there was all this excitement around them. But the first thing that I noticed when I went into my local card shop was, first, the price was expensive. I think it was about $20 a pack, if I'm not mistaken. Most packs back then, were $1, $2. There was a couple of more nicer ones that may have been up to $5, but $20 a pack was a lot. But I love these cards, and this was in the height when I was always getting the Griffey. I had to get the Griffies for everything. And normally I wouldn't buy a pack for $25, but it just so happened that I had $25 from my grandmother as a birthday gift, because my birthday is in November, and that's why I knew it was November. And so I had this $25, and in my little town, believe it or not, we had 3 card shops. All of them were at about, I don't know, a quarter to a half a mile of each other, and all 3 of the owners knew each other. I would go to all 3, and it was depending on which one would, they all sort of specialized in different types of things, so depending on what I or anybody else was looking for, depending on where you went. So the one card shop that had the most wax in it, the owner's name was Asa. So, and I've talked about him in the past in a previous video I did. But he was the one that he secured, I think, 3 maybe boxes of 93 Topps Finest. Again, $20 a pack. I had money, and then there was another dealer, and we're going to talk about him a little bit, and his name is Mark. So he was down the street, and he didn't have any packs, but he did have a client who wanted to put the set together, and I knew this. So what he was doing was he would say, any card, even commons, he would pay 50% Beckett book value cash for. So I thought, if I pull something and it's not the Griffey, because I really wanted the Griffey, then I knew that I could at least sell whatever I had pulled, and as long as I could get at least $40 in book value, then I could sell those cards to Mark, get $20 back if it was that much, go back and buy another pack. So that's what I did, just to see. So I went and I bought a pack, no Griffey, but I had some stuff in there, went down to Mark, sold him the cards at 50% book, took the cash, went back to Asa, bought another pack, and I kept doing this back and forth. Every once in a while I would get a bigger card. I do remember I pulled a Barry Bonds, so I was able to sell that for more, and I would go back and buy 2 packs, and I was just trying to find a Griffey. That was my big thing. Or if I could get a Nolan Ryan. And I went back and forth, and it was so much fun kind of just doing this, just finding these cards and selling commons or selling other stars that I didn't care about, and going back and buying these really expensive packs for the time, especially for me at that age. So I went back and forth, and I did pull a Nolan Ryan, and so that kind of took a big chunk out of my money that I was gaining, and I went back and forth. But there was one specific time I remember pulling a card, and it was a Terry Pendleton. And Terry Pendleton was the third baseman for the Atlanta Braves at the time. They had just come, well, they had not made the World Series in '93, but 2 previous, 91 and 2. Pendleton was the NL MVP in '91, and he was a big star for the Braves. And I knew I could sell him, but one of the things I noticed was Pendleton's card looked weird. It looked different than all the other cards I had buying and selling back and forth. So I was down at Mark's place, and I was showing him this Terry Pendleton, and another customer happened to say, hey, that's called a refractor. Refractors were not advertised or anything. Of course, now that's a common term within the industry, but at the time it was a brand new thing. They said it's kind of a rainbowy looking thing, and the Terry Pendleton that I had happened to be a refractor. So I pulled a refractor in '93. '93 refractors are very hard to come by. Would love to have a Griffey. Just so you know, I'd never pulled the Griffey. I don't have the Griffey. I wish I did, but I don't. But I did have this Terry Pendleton, and I think the quality, the multiplier was, I don't know, 10 times whatever value. And I was like, oh my gosh, I sold this semi-star or whatever, and I got so much more money for it. And I remember that card that I pulled, the refractor Terry Pendleton. So as the day went back and forth, I pulled a Griffey. And when I did, That kind of ran out of my money, but man, it was just fun. It was one of the most fun days I remember having, going back and forth, just trying to chase something, but knowing I actually was pulling some value for some cash that I could get that day on the spot. And I still have the Griffey, and so I'm going to show you. This is the Griffey that I pulled that day. As you can see, it's not the refractor, but it is the same one, and I have it all these years later. So there's my Griffey from this set. And it's great. When I look at this card, I remember that day. I remember pulling those cards. I remember driving back and forth, going back, just getting excited about that thing. Fast forward to this past weekend. So, as some of you know, I have a small woodworking business. I set up at craft fairs and festivals and things like that. I happened to have one this past weekend in my hometown. And Friday night, I was downtown and I was setting up my booth, and it just so happened that the dealer that I was just referring to, Mark, was walking by. Now, Mark hasn't owned a card shop in 20 years. He's gone on to other things or whatever, but he's still around town. He's walking down the road as people are setting up their tents for the festival, and he said, "Hey, Drew," and we still know each other or whatever. He said, "Hey, I want to talk to you when you get a chance." So I kept on setting up, and we had a chance. He told me that he said that he was selling his entire collection. It's just come to that point in his life where it's a lot of stuff. It's not just his collection, it's the leftover inventory from his store and everything else. He's trying to get rid of it. But he had told me, he said, "You're always a good guy. You're always a good customer all those years ago. I have someone that I think is lined up to buy the entire collection, but if you want to go through the Griffies that I had, feel free to go through before I sell them." I thought that was so cool that he remembered that he would do that for me. So he and I kind of chatted about it. I'm kind of excited, texted a couple guys just saying, "Hey, maybe we can find some Griffies." Not huge exciting ones, not high expensive ones, but just ones we may not have in our own PC. Anyway, as the weekend goes by, Sunday comes and I'm at my booth and I'm selling my wares, or not selling my wares, but I'm in there and I see Mark walking up the street and he's got a box under his arm. And he's smiling his face. He's like, "Hey, look, I've been looking through these cards and I pulled out, I don't know much more about cards." He really is out of the industry. But he said, "These are ones that I pulled out that I thought were interesting. I want you to get a look and take a look." So I'm flipping through, and there was a lot of cool cards, some auto cards, relic cards, rookies, a few vintage, here and there. It was just a smattering of stuff that he had pulled out. No rhyme or reason, multiple sports in it. Some I knew a lot about, some I didn't know. Anyway, but as I'm pulling out, I pulled out one specific card. And when I did, I just froze. I just stopped, and I just smiled. And he's like, "What? What is it? What is it?" And I showed him the card, and he's like, "So?" I was like, "Mark, you don't understand. There is a story behind this card. I cannot believe you still have this card." And what he had was a 1993 Terry Pendleton refractor. And he still had it. He actually never had sold it. And I have told the story before to friends and stuff about how that one day, it was such a fun day collecting cards and going back and forth, selling things and all that. And the whole Terry Pendleton refractor, and it was just a story. It's a story that I've had for years, but the fact that he still had the Terry Pendleton was just so cool to see it again, to remind me of that story. And he said, "Drew," he said, "I don't know if that's worth a whole lot or whatever, but I'll tell you what, you keep it." And so he gave it to me, and I appreciated that immensely. So there's two cards that I pulled from a pack somewhere back in November of 1993. The Griffey that I was on the hunt for, that I still have and has been in my collection for the last 28 years, but also the Terry Pendleton refractor, which I am now calling my Boomerang card, because I had given it away, it was gone, and I had not forgotten about the card, but had no intention of ever seeing it again. Yet somehow it made its way back in my collection. So if you have anything like that, do you have a Boomerang card? Tell me about it. I want to hear. Let's share some stories about something like that. And but anyway, thanks for coming along in the journey today. I really appreciate it. You guys be good.